if you can step outside of the focus on the dollar and the focus on the close rate and focus on being effective in your delivery, being effective in your questions that you ask, your clarifying questions that you ask, being compassionate in your responses and the language you use, everything starts to shift for the positive, including the money you make and your close rate.
Hey, you leader, entrepreneur, business owner, solopreneur, whatever you call yourself, we know you're a visionary business builder, wealth seeker looking to combine a passion for doing good with leading consciously. It's time to shift from a traditional focus of pure wealth accumulation to one that integrates well-being and fulfillment. This is the Conscious Edge podcast, and I'm Alicia St. Germain, entrepreneur and coach. Along with my friend and wellness advocate, Jonathan Duggar, we're diving into what it means to embody radical self-acceptance while still evolving to lead with compassion and kindness. We're sharing our own experiences and expertise as we unpack imposter syndrome, perfectionism, procrastination, and all the other things that lead to burnout and keep you from experiencing pure joy, business growth, and maximum impact. This is a safe and supportive space to explore what it means to be a human creating wealth and building a business. You're here for a purpose, and it's time to shine your light. So here we go. Welcome back to the Conscious Edge podcast. I'm your host, Alicia St. Germain, with Jonathan Duggar. Woohoo. And I want to talk today about sales. That dirty, dirty word. Like if you are somebody who has ever said, I'm not good at sales, I don't like selling, you feel weird when you sell, you don't make offers enough, you feel bad following up with people because you're afraid you're bothering them, you worry or get upset when you sell to someone and then they don't use whatever it is you sold or it goes to waste, any kind of trigger that you have around sales, that is what we are talking about today. So if you are new and you're just joining us, we want to say welcome. We're so excited to have you. Jonathan and I are really on a mission to help individuals who have businesses live a more full life, to find that place where their passions and purpose intersect with prosperity. And we started this podcast as one way that we could do that. So if you enjoyed today's episode, we encourage you to hit the follow button so that we come out with these episodes every week, which is super fun because we get to meet and talk and have these cool conversations. And if you've been with us for any amount of time, we're just so happy to have you back. So, Jonathan.
Yes.
I remember when we first met, you were doing like sales consulting for those seminar companies out there that like you go to a sales seminar and you were like sitting in and giving feedback around sales. So you've been around this topic for a long time.
Yes, definitely.
And so why is sales so icky?
Well, one of the things you can kind of reverse the frame of reference, most of us don't like to be sold to. So we get this perspective that sales has to be, or is always this, hardcore, convince somebody to do something, maybe even if it's not a great fit or it's not something they want to do. It's all about the money. Sales is for money. So those are a lot of the that's a context of some of the myths around sales, but that does have negative connotation. And even as I'm saying it out loud, it feels icky.
Yeah.
So.
Well, and the first thing that came up was, it's all about the metrics. It's all about, what dollars per head and the metrics and all of that.
What's your close rate?
What's your close rate and conversions? And I think that those things are really valuable to track, especially as we've been talking about in some previous episodes, like finances and really paying close attention. And in fact, I just had a meeting with the coach that I'm working with on finances and budgeting and learning projections. And I think those things are really important for knowing where you can improve things and where you could let things go. But it's almost like these metrics became a valuation of somebody, a salesperson's performance.
Yes.
Whether they're good or not good.
Yep.
And so it made a really toxic culture around sales.
Yeah. And it's often in many sales environments, it's a very competitive system too. And where those metrics are applied in a competitive format, but often out of context, like without taking into context a specific market or a specific uncontrollable incident that was part of the sales process or that disrupted the sales process, or a variety of things that aren't accounted for, but that person is still judged, performance is still judged based on this really strict, often completely non-applicable set of standards or metrics. So it sets up for, again, feeding into that sort of toxicity and negativity of the sales environment, sales as a process.
Yeah. And so we were talking a little bit before we started recording too about, I do sales. We all do sales, right? And I love to pay people money for things that solve a problem for me or make me feel good or that I really want, enjoy, meet a need. I used to be one of those people that like ghosted people who were trying to sell. I just didn't want to deal with them. And I've learned to just be really direct and also appreciate someone for the courage that it takes them to reach out to someone and ask for their business. And it's a really nice place to live because I can be really clear with someone, but I can also say, hey, I know how much courage that took. And I find they're so appreciative to have been seen like that. So I hope that today, as we go through this episode, that you'll have a number of takeaways around how you feel about what you're offering to the world, but also have compassion for someone who is selling and maybe trying to figure out how to do that in an aligned way or in a way that feels good, and have compassion for the constraints that may be put on them, have compassion for them fumbling their way through something that is actually maybe very uncomfortable for them, and just offers some grace to all of those people out there who are trying to sell you something, but maybe it doesn't feel great.
Yeah. I think that's a great way to set it up too, because I just thought of something too, and I'll go ahead and, before I forget, I'll go ahead and bring it up. We as entrepreneurs and small business owners, we have a real advantage in terms of how we offer services, how we offer product, because we can make up our own rules, if you will. We can set our own metrics. We can set our own guidelines. And so many people that come from sales backgrounds and corporate structures, they're up against a set of standards and rules that are not their own, and often are misaligned with maybe their true selves. They're misaligned with their hearts. So it really is can be a very, very tough environment. I have a fellow that I coached for a while that was in medical sales, and at our very first sort of get to know each other conversation, he's like, I lose a piece of my soul every day I show up at work. And I was just like, holy mackerel, what an opening. But that's the level that he felt that, having to sell in a misaligned way.
So I think then us moving into that whole conversation about like selling in alignment is, I think that is really where we want to spend our time today, so that you can get your offers out there. You can help individuals. And I don't care whether you're selling a product or service that you have, or even if you're making offers on real estate. I can't tell you how often I would hear people offer more than they could, more than really made a good deal because they were worried about offending the sellers.
I've been guilty of that.
And so how do we get into alignment with what you can pay to make it a good deal, but then also have some kind of integrity or feel good about what you're doing, even in that respect as well? So where do we kick this conversation off around aligned selling?
Well, for me, I mean, if you guys have been listening, you know I bring up aspects related to language and neurolinguistics a lot. And I do that because I truly believe it is incredibly important, and it's had a huge amount of impact in the way I do business and the way I work with other people. And so often I try and change language up, put it in a context that's not as loaded, and sales is one of those areas. So I actually don't even use the word sales very often. It's good to give reference using that, but when I'm having the conversation, I talk about services and I talk about advocacy, which maybe that isn't a word you think around sales, but think about it this way. If you're having a conversation with somebody and you're truly aligned, you truly believe that you have benefit to offer, you truly believe in your product or your service, you become an advocate for that service and for that other person to participate in that service or that program or that product because you truly believe it will be helpful. And that's such a different way of thinking about things than if you're trying to sell something to meet a quota, if you're trying to close a deal to make a number or to make a dollar amount. And then the outcome from that type of mentality and that type of approach is completely different in terms of longevity of customer, organic reviews where you get good reviews or good press, positive press from without even having to try. Yeah, just to work for it. It just happens because that person you're meeting a need for that person in a helpful way. So just changing the language can have a huge benefit and a huge impact on how you think about the whole sales process. So how many of you, when you, like Alicia brought up, you can start getting anxiety around the idea of offering your service or offering your product. And that probably doesn't have to do as much with your belief in the usefulness of it or your worthiness to do it as it does just the stigma around sales itself. Mm-hmm. So when you take that sting out of it and put it in a different format, I'm offering a service. I'm offering a value-added service. I'm offering a helpful service, and becoming an advocate for that process, trying to help your customer improve their lives, it changes everything.
And ultimately what you're talking about is, and it all comes back to the big assumption, right? So what are you assuming to be true as he's about to spit out his tea? What are you assuming to be true about sales? And in fact, I had a client that, like, she's just the most amazing offer to help people. And in her mind, she was not having conversations with people who really needed her support because she had a belief that sales, like offering something, was sleazy. And I mean, that just is such a part of our culture and the way things have come. Really admitting that you may have some beliefs that are inaccurate about sales and have some big assumptions, or even just if I follow up with people after I've already spoken to them, I'm bothering them. When in fact, there are some people who will be bothered, but if they're bothered that you're following up with them because they can't physically tell you no because they feel bad. Right? You just got two big assumptions competing with each other.
The battle of the big assumptions.
The battle of the assumptions, right? Yes, that is some people. But also there are people who are busy and forgot, people who are avoiding it because they're actually a little bit scared. And they really need you to help them feel comfortable to move forward because they do know it will solve their problem, but they're in overwhelm or they're in overthinking because they're not sure they feel safe moving forward. And that's part of your job as the advocate for your service is to advocate for the service, but for that person in a way that helps them move forward and feel supported and feel confident in the decision that they are making, that really empowering them to make that decision. So in that follow-up process, you're not bothering people, you're actually supporting people.
Yep. That's the ideal time to help that person drill down in understanding what they truly do need or don't need too, because that's the other thing is, your client, when you're an advocate, you're working with a client to help them better understand themselves and what they really need to be helpful, to be useful, to improve, whatever it is. And sometimes that's not what you're offering. But people that buy out of either guilt or fear or confusion, that's not the kind of customer or the kind of client that tends to stick around, or that's the ones that are asking for their money back a week later or whatever.
It's the ones that leave the bad reviews.
Exactly.
Yeah. So really, I think of the sales process as really about building clarity and making sure that that person feels really comfortable. They can be uncomfortable because it's maybe outside of their comfort zone, but they know that they're moving themselves towards their vision and something that they want, especially being in a coaching industry. Like, pretty much my business is resistance, right?
Yeah, this is true.
Big assumptions. Like, that's where I live. And I live in Triggerland. But like,
that is not built by Disney.
Yeah. But I can acknowledge, like, when is a customer making a decision away from what they fear, or are they making a decision that is towards what they want?
Yeah.
And that's, I think, a really big distinction. That's my job to help them clarify, what am I afraid of? What do I really want? And if there's too much fear or confusion or resistance, then I often will say, like, well, maybe this isn't the right time.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not here to convince. I'm here to bring light and transparency and clarify.
One of my favorite responses from a potential client or customer, when I ask them in a consultative way or an advocacy way, I ask them, well, what is it? What do you see your need is right now? Or what do you think you need? And they tell me, I don't know, or I have no idea. That's one of my favorite responses, because that is a gateway opening for me to have a heart-to-heart conversation about what's real for them, what's useful for them, what's helpful for them, and maybe pick through things, misconceptions they have about what they think they need instead of what will truly be helpful and useful.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the hardest clients, in my opinion, to deal with is when somebody comes at you with a list of what exactly they need. Because often you have to do some untangling, because there's a misalignment there, because you're like, it's not what, you're saying the words, but this is what's happening in your business, or this is what's happening in your relationships. And so you have to do some untangling to get to what they truly do need.
What they truly do need.
That might be a bit more challenging.
So I think when you are the person selling, gosh, number one, you've got to stop making it about you. And I mean that wholeheartedly, like, put aside whatever it is. When I'm meeting with someone, yeah, you may need the money, you may need this or that, but really putting aside whatever it is you need and really listening to that client. Mm-hmm. And then the other thing that I sometimes see happen is people get annoyed in their sales process with people who they call them tire kickers, or they call them like
tire kickers.
Tire kickers. Yeah.
Not
have
tiger.
You
no, you tiger. Said you said tiger kickers.
I don't know, tire kickers.
I was like, that's a new one. What book did you read that one?
I was trying to say tire kickers, but maybe it sounded funny.
It did. That's awesome.
But my point is, like, you judge your buyers.
Yes, absolutely.
You judge your buyers. They're naysayers. They're difficult. I hear people talk about from a marketing perspective, like, I want to make sure that my marketing that I do detracts or takes away, like, these people they waste my time.
Mm-hmm.
And it's such an entitled way of selling, because whoever you're attracting is really a mirror of what you're putting out there, where your mindset is, the words that you tend to use. You're always going to bring people into your sphere who are going to mirror whatever it is that you've got to work on or put out, or you're putting out there.
Absolutely. It's also an opportunity. We miss so many opportunities because we do sit in that place of sort of self-involvement, selfishness, whatever you want to call it. When you do truly have that situation where someone is extremely difficult, extremely anti everything, for regardless of your best efforts, there's still lessons in that. There's still a place to learn things, gifts to be able to find. And if we can sit in that and sit in our own discomfort, it's hugely powerful in terms of getting better and better in those situations, and also becoming much more aware of the alignment pieces of, this isn't a customer that's in alignment with us. I'm not the best fit for them, and that's okay. Mm-hmm. So now let's say next, in a helpful and useful way. So,
and I think that as you work on yourself, so I guess the point to that is like, as if you're having judgments about who's sitting across from you, why are you attracting that type of person?
Yes.
What is it about you and what you're saying, what you're putting out there, whatever it is? Where's the work for you to do that would make it so you don't attract that kind of person?
Exactly.
Energetically.
Exactly. And that's, we're going to have a conversation soon about marketing and branding. And that's a huge place in that subject area. It's like, how do you attract the people that, for the most part, are going to be in alignment with what you're trying to do?
Mm-hmm.
So it's so interesting because I was looking, when we first started this conversation, I was thinking about kind of getting over the myths of sales, the negativity of sales, but which I think that's the first part of this we've had. But now it occurs to me, we should probably talk a little bit about effective sales, being effective, and what may be once we get to the place of being advocates and over the hurdle of it being so uncomfortable or whatever it is for us, how do we be more effective at it? When there's things in the way.
So how do we be effective at
it? Does that feel like a good shift?
Yeah.
I don't know if that's where you're intended to get.
I know our listeners are sitting there. Okay, so like, I get it. Tell me what to do.
Well, this just occurred to me, and I'd made some notes, but this just occurred to me like one of those flashbulb memories. So years ago, let me give you a little context. So one of the things that I do in sales coaching and sales training environments a lot, or is sort of this alignment with your own core values, selling from a place of heart, selling from a place of alignment and integrity and abundance. And so I work with especially platform trainers or platform salespeople to help them sell from a place of their true beliefs and their important beliefs, and also their personalities. So aligning those pieces. And something that has come up a lot over the years, even with very experienced salespeople, is when they're having challenges closing, or they're having challenges once they've made the offer, getting people to actually to that place of spending the money, of pulling the trigger and actually affecting what's been presented to them. I would say 95% of the time, there is a gap between the person believing that they're effective and useful and helpful. So it's a worthiness piece, and that there's a fear in the follow-up. So there's a fear that they can actually produce or provide what they're presenting. So those two pieces are often places of self-discovery and self-work more than anything else, and truly believing that you have value. Your own self-worth and what you're providing and what you're doing is important and is helpful and is useful. And then overcoming the fear of the follow-up, overcoming the fear of being effective when you actually implement whatever it is.
And when you're saying follow-up, I just want to clarify, you don't mean like following up and then doing the sale again. It's
No.
Brought the customer in.
Fulfillment.
And now oh crap, now I got to do what I said I was going to do. Right?
Exactly.
Sorry if you have kids listening. So yeah, and I see that all the time in coaching, all the time. We work through things and it'll be like, there's fear of responsibility.
Mm-hmm.
And so a lot of times people will underprice themselves because there's this belief that if I charge what's appropriate and sustainable for my business, I'm going to have to deliver at this much higher level, or I have to give more tangibles.
Yeah.
Than really just the information and the transformation that someone will have in working with me, or the problem that it will solve is going to be enough, right?
Yep.
That just that your knowledge base is enough. And I remember very early on, as I was putting together the Exponential Entrepreneur Program where I work with people, I had it so packed full of lessons because I wanted to pump up the value. Value. And it was taking people so long to get into what they really needed to know. Not that they were not getting value or not staying connected, but it was just like, oh, we can make transformation so much faster if I just pull these things out.
Yeah.
And so I did that, pulled it out. I actually turned it into a free training now. So just give it away for free on the Conscious Edge website, which is great because then everybody can go through and do some of the basic things that you need for clarity, but then we just get into the meat of it. And so often you start trying to pump up your confidence by actually giving stuff that creates a lot of chaos and confusion and is less effective. More is not better.
Exactly. I think sometimes too, we tend to stack on those value adds, I'm using air quotes, because we're not clear on what we're providing. We're not clear as to how it's helpful.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of upfront work needs to be done to get to a place of feeling authentic in what you're doing, feeling capable of what you're doing or providing, and being very clear in terms of how you're offering and what you're offering and what you are offering.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's sort of like if there's this doubt, this self-doubt, then that's when you start, okay, well, I'm going to have to do these other things in order to make it worthwhile, or to fill in those gaps.
Mm-hmm.
And that's most of the time, like you said, it's extra stuff. It's not that it's not valuable, but it's not necessary.
Mm-hmm. And it can become overwhelming to consume.
Yes.
Or use. And then you don't even use everything that's available to you. So that was has been a really interesting transformation and journey through learning about sales. And then the other piece is not this belief, I find, that having the conversation with someone, the sales conversation with someone, doesn't have value. It's almost like, how would I say this? It's like people think that your customers are doing you a favor by getting on the call with you. That's what I'm trying to say. Like, it's a give and receive. It goes both ways. They get value from talking to you about how you can help them.
Exactly. And that's where this whole concept of advocacy and being a consultative approach is so important, because that is a reciprocal sort of feedback system. So you're looking for solutions to challenges that person's having. And that person has the opportunity to think about and present and refine what those challenges are. And you're helping them do that. It's a reciprocal type relationship. So I talk a lot about, when I do sales coaching, I talk a lot about compassion-based sales and empathic-based sales. I think empathy is a huge component to effective sales. So sales, especially metrics-driven sales teams and salespeople, often are so caught up on the outcome that they lose their empathy and they lose their compassion. And when that happens, you start seeing numbers drop. You start seeing loss of revenue and all those things happen. And if you can step outside of the focus on the dollar and the focus on the close rate and focus on being effective in your delivery, being effective in your questions that you ask, your clarifying questions that you ask, being compassionate in your responses and the language you use, everything starts to shift for the positive, including the money you make and your close rate. But that doesn't have to be the focus in the front end. And I'm a true believer that it's detrimental for it to be the focus in the forefront of your sales approach.
So what's effective when you say effective questions?
So effective questions would be those that help, again, go back to that concept of advocacy, that help you refine what this person truly needs, help them refine what they truly need. So asking questions, clarifying to make sure that there's no disconnection or no misunderstanding, and then following up with an approach that is directed specifically at what they've told you. Say, somebody says, well, I'm having trouble hiring employees that stay for more than a few weeks. Okay, so follow up with a question to say, okay, so how are you hiring those employees? So try and build a true picture instead of going to, okay, I've got something, you're going to the solution before you've even figured out what the problem is. And that happens a lot in a pressure-driven sales environment. Someone is already, okay, this is what I'm going to close them on, regardless of what they're telling you. So being very adamant about understanding what their situation, what their problem, what their challenges truly are before you even start presenting the idea of a solution.
Another piece of value when we're talking about that exchange, just getting on the phone with someone or getting into a conversation with someone and feeling heard and understood has value.
Absolutely.
When someone you're working with feels heard and understood and cared about, that is an exchange that fills them up and has value. So that's where this idea of like not wanting to talk to people or really connect with people, I question when someone's like that. I'm like, ooh, where is connection feel scary for you or unsafe for you? That you just want to like turn them and burn them and like run through these conversations without truly connecting to the human that is on the other side.
Well, one of the things I think that you don't read this much in the sales and leadership type books, with a few exceptions, but one of the things that I am adamant about with my clients is that everyone gets very clear on what their functional and their emotional boundaries are when it comes to the sales interaction and the sales process. Because a lot of people, especially if you're in a situation where you do cold calling, and I've done a fair amount of cold calling in my past, and I do not like cold calling. I tell myself that up front. And then once I actually get into it, I enjoy it more than I thought I would. But the reason being is you often have an unrealistic list or a set of criteria that you're trying to meet that has nothing to do with the interactions that actually happen. So if you are very clear that I'm going to make calls today until whatever time frame, or, I'm going to do this for 2 hours, and I'm going to do that regardless of how I feel. I think that's detrimental. It's like, I'm going to do this till I stop feeling fresh, until I stop feeling the joy or the excitement or the curiosity in this. I'm going to just stop that at that point. And then the emotional side of that is when you're dealing with a particular type of customer, or you are on the edge of what you're able to handle for the day, and you from a mindful standpoint, things start coming up for you. You start feeling triggered easier. You start feeling helpless and hopeless, whatever it is, then you need to recognize that it's okay to step out of it. Because so many sales training, you will hear the idea of powering through, just push through, power through. You've got to get over that hurdle. You've got to get beyond, push beyond your wall. I hear all that kind of language all the time. I think that's so detrimental. All that does is set people up to fail, because it puts them back in that mind state of sales is a negative thing. Sales is a hurtful thing. It's a painful thing. It doesn't have to be.
And I think that's different. What you're describing is different than if you're afraid to sell and make the initial call. Like, we do want to hold you through that. that getting over it, because what is causing you to say, this feels like a wall for me, is that it feels unsafe.
Yes.
And so then the question is it really unsafe? Like, what is the worst thing that's going to happen to you? I always used to say this when I was teaching people with real estate, and they would market, and I'd say, what is the worst thing that's going to happen if you market? And they'd say, people will call. And I was
Somebody
like,
will call.
Not the worst thing that's going to happen.
Somebody said, actually call.
Right? But also, what's the worst thing is they hang up on you. And I'm like, okay, you didn't die. Like, no tiger jumped out of the closet and like tried to eat your head, or
you didn't kick a tiger.
You didn't kick a tiger. But our brain, our bodies are uncomfortable because maybe rejection, or worrying about what people will think, or maybe feeling like maybe something you're doing is out of alignment. And, I've gotten to a point with the work that I do. I love to offer to work with people. I love to find out, what is it that you are trying to accomplish? What is it that's getting in the way? And in my process, I'm like, okay, so let's look at, what are you believing to be true?
Mm-hmm.
And my work is to expose that to you, to show you like, hey, if you didn't believe your big assumption, imagine what possibilities would be opened up to you. And people are like, oh my gosh, I didn't even see that line that was drawn between my behavior, what I'm doing, and why I can't get to my goal. And that awareness alone, whether someone says, yes, I'll work with you or not, I know they're better for it. And so I think finding your way through your sales process, that someone has information to be empowered to make a decision for themselves, know more about themselves. I'm not coming. I like, why is that a bad thing?
Yeah,
To me, that's an amazing thing, that I get to connect with a human and just help them through a part of their life.
Yeah, do you know who Brandon Burchard is?
Mm-hmm.
Brendan Burchard.
Mm-hmm.
One of his books, I can't remember which one, but he talks about, as opposed to sales, he thinks of it as engagement and the opportunity to engage. And I really like that because it is. And if you're just getting started out, and I think back to my early beginnings in real estate, if you're just getting started, every opportunity to engage is hugely valuable. It helps you practice. It helps you refine. It helps you discover. It's hugely valuable. And like you, I get excited about the engagement, about the back and forth, about I'm curious to discover how this person thinks, what they really need, what's going to be helpful, what's going to be useful. And I think that's the other thing. If you can rewire your brain to look at it as an opportunity to engage, it changes the dynamic completely.
So this has gone by so fast, and I feel like we could dive into this so much more. But here's what I think would be really supportive. If you are listening to today's podcast and you have like specific fears around selling, I'm going to encourage you to either send me a DM on Instagram at Alicia St. G, or just shoot me an email at hello@consciousedge and tell me specifically, what are some of your fears or challenges, or what do you want to know about selling? And we will unpack those. We will take some time and unpack some of those different things that come up for people. Specifically,
that's a great idea.
Like, give some coaching, like actually give some coaching here on the podcast based on what comes up for people. Because I know that this is a big, big part of creating wealth. And man, is this the most human part of it, right? Because it touches money, and somehow money, like, it just amplifies and makes everything feel so much more at stake. Yes. And as you were talking about being new in real estate, I'm thinking of that person. I'm clearly very excited and pumped up about this. I was thinking about that new person that goes, I want to be professional. And what if I don't know everything? And what if they find out I'm new? And all of those fears. And I think that's another myth of sales, is that you have to know everything.
Absolutely. And that's kind of what I was talking about with engagement. If you look at it as a place of discovery,
Yeah.
That means you're learning by doing. You're learning as part of the process.
Yeah. And it's kind of like, so what if you didn't know it?
Yeah.
And you lost the sale or you lost the opportunity? I bet you're going to go learn it and you'll know it for next time because you better believe it's going to come up again.
Yep.
So let's do that. Let's leave it here with a request from you, the listener, to reach out and let us know specifically what is the stuff that comes up for you around sales. And then we'll use that and do some coaching on the podcast in future episodes.
Great idea.
Awesome. So with all that being said, I'm sending you so much love.
Be well, everybody.
Thanks for listening to the Conscious Edge podcast. Make sure you subscribe and take a moment to be kind and share this episode with someone you care about. Leave a review to help us bring more compassionate leaders building businesses and creating wealth to the table. And for show notes, head over to consciousedge.com/podcast. This podcast and the linked materials are presented solely for general information, educational, and entertainment purposes and should not be taken as personal or medical advice or any kind of mental health treatment. Please consult a medical or mental health professional if you feel you need such services. Please be advised that all investing and entrepreneurial endeavors involve risk, and the use of the education and information on this podcast and linked materials is at the user's own risk.
This podcast is part of the Sound Advice FM network. Sound Advice FM, women's voices amplified.